I thought I knew my wife, Sarah. We had been together for over 8 years, and I always believed that we had a strong marriage. We met in college, fell in love under the stars, and built a life filled with dreams and promises. But lately, something felt off. It started with the little things, the way she would look at her phone and quickly change the screen when I walked into the room, the late nights at work that seemed to stretch longer than they used to, and the sudden interest in going out with her friends. I brushed it off at first, convincing myself that it was just the stress of work and life. After all, we had just bought a house and were planning for the future. But deep down, I felt a nagging suspicion that I couldn't shake. Things changed after she got a promotion at her job. The Sarah I knew, fun, warm, affectionate, started to fade. Instead, I was met with a more distant version of her, one that felt like a stranger. I tried to keep the faith. I tried to be understanding, to give her space, but I couldn't help but feel like I was losing her. The intimacy between us dwindled. We barely touched, let alone had sex. One Saturday, I was home alone scrolling through social media when I saw a photo that made my stomach drop. It was Sarah, smiling widely, her arm wrapped around another guy. The photo was tagged at a bar downtown, and her face radiated joy. I had never seen that look on her face in months. I felt a surge of anger and confusion. Who was this guy? Why was she out with him? I decided I needed to confront her. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the picture gave me a pit in my stomach. I needed answers. When she got home later that evening, I acted normal, even cheerful. I didn't want to raise any suspicions. As we sat down for dinner, I casually asked about her day. She spoke about work, her new project, and her friends, but I could see her eyes flicker with something, guilt. I didn't know yet. Then I decided to drop the bomb. "Hey, I saw your photo from the bar with that guy from work. Looks like you had a good time." Her face paled, and for a moment I thought I saw a flash of panic in her eyes. She recovered quickly, though, putting on a facade that felt rehearsed. "Oh, it was just a work outing. You know how it is, celebrating the promotion. He's just a friend." That excuse felt weak, and I could sense her discomfort. I pressed on. "A friend? You looked awfully cozy for just a friend." My heart raced as I watched her fumble for words. She started to make excuses, claiming that I was overthinking things, that she loved me, and that I had nothing to worry about. But the more she talked, the more I felt like I was losing her, and the more the truth began to surface. As her voice turned into a blur of lies and half-truths, I felt a rage building inside me mixed with sorrow. I couldn't process what was happening as I fought back tears. I didn't want to believe she could betray me like this. I thought we were solid, but now everything felt like quicksand beneath my feet. The night continued with her dodging questions, twisting words, and blaming my insecurity for the tension. I wanted to scream, to tell her how her words felt like daggers, but I kept it inside. I felt like a fool for having trusted her so completely. That was the moment I realized she was cheating, and still she was lying to my face. It cut deeper than any knife. In that moment, I knew I had to decide how to confront this betrayal. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain. The woman I thought I knew was slipping away from me, and I needed to reclaim my life. I was done pretending everything was fine. The next steps would be crucial. The pain was intense, but it was time to think about revenge. In the days following that fateful confrontation, a storm of emotions engulfed me. I felt like I was living in a haze, oscillating between disbelief, anger, and an all-consuming sadness. I was haunted by vivid memories of Sarah, our wedding day, our laughter in the kitchen, the long talks we had about our dreams. It felt surreal to think that the woman I loved could turn around and betray me in such a profound way. The image of her smiling with that guy at the bar replayed in my mind on a loop, each time unraveling another thread of hope I still held onto. I knew I had to gather evidence of her infidelity. I had to know for sure whether my intuition was right. So I started by snooping around a little. I didn't feel proud of it, but my heart was racing in a different way now. The more I found, the more I felt like I was closing in on the truth. I went through her phone when she was in the shower one morning, shaking with anxiety and adrenaline. At first, there was nothing too incriminating, just texts with friends and coworkers. But then I stumbled upon a conversation between her and someone named Eric. The messages were flirtatious, filled with emojis and inside jokes that made my stomach churn. It was clear they had been exchanging messages for weeks. My hands trembled as I read through the texts. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing, and you make me feel alive. Each message felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. I was no longer imagining things. Sarah had crossed a line. My resolve hardened. I wouldn't confront her just yet. I wanted to plan my revenge, to strike when she least expected it. It was time to play the long game. I started to think about how I could gather more information. I needed to find out just how deep this affair went. So, I enlisted the help of my best friend, Jason. He had always been supportive and could help me figure out how to gather intel without alerting Sarah. I told Jason everything and he listened intently, his face a mix of sympathy and fury. "We'll get to the bottom of this," he said, his voice steady. "You deserve to know the truth, and once we have the evidence, we can plan how to handle it." The next week, Jason and I devised a plan. He would help me set up a situation where I could catch Sarah in the act. It wasn't something I ever thought I'd be doing, but I felt driven by rage and an unsettling desire for justice. We decided to follow her one night after work. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread as we set up the plan, but I also felt a surge of determination. Finally, the night came. I waited anxiously for Sarah to leave the house, and when she finally headed out, I followed her car under the cover of darkness, Jason right behind me. We trailed her for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in my chest. I was terrified of what I might find, but I needed to know for sure. We parked a few blocks away from a trendy restaurant where I saw her pull into the lot. My stomach dropped when I saw Eric leaning against the building, looking too casual and too confident. I felt sick. I could hardly breathe as I watched Sarah get out of the car, her face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in so long. They embraced like old friends. It was sickening. They walked inside together, and I knew I had to get evidence. Jason and I waited outside, pacing back and forth, our breaths visible in the cold night air. Just as I was about to give up, I saw them come out, laughing and leaning into each other. My heart raced as I watched Eric lean down and whisper something in her ear. Sarah giggled, and it struck me like a punch in the gut. The betrayal was right in front of me, and I was powerless to stop it. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I felt the warmth of vengeance overtake the coldness of betrayal. I didn't just want to hurt her. I wanted to expose her for who she truly was. I wanted to take back the power she had stolen from me. As they approached their cars, I snapped a few pictures with my phone, each click punctuating the pain I felt. Later, as I sat in the car with Jason, the reality of what I had seen began to sink in. I felt hollow, yet there was a strange satisfaction brewing within me. I had the evidence I needed, and now I knew what I had to do next. I would confront Sarah again, but this time it would be on my terms. I would lay everything out in front of her, and she wouldn't be able to twist her way out of it. The emotional impact of what I was about to do weighed heavily on my mind. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I loved her, but the trust was shattered, and now I had to decide how much more I was willing to endure. Revenge was a powerful motivator, and I was ready to strike at her weakest moment. It was time to reclaim my life. The following day was a blur. I felt like I was living in a dream and a nightmare simultaneously, going through the motions while my mind was consumed by thoughts of Sarah and Eric. I had the images on my phone, the evidence that would shatter her carefully constructed facade. It was surreal to think that I had caught her red-handed, and now it was time to confront her once and for all. I spent the day preparing for our confrontation, mentally rehearsing what I wanted to say. I thought about her lies and the way she had manipulated my trust. I needed to remain calm and collected. I couldn't let my emotions overwhelm me. But deep down, I knew that the moment would be charged with anger and betrayal, and I'd have to brace myself for her reaction. When Sarah came home that evening, I pretended everything was normal. I made dinner, and we sat at the table exchanging trivialities about our day. I could see her glancing at her phone more often than before, and it was maddening. I wanted to scream, to throw her phone against the wall, but I held back. The time to act would come soon enough. After dinner, I led her to the living room where I had set up my phone on the coffee table. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. "Sarah, we need to talk." She looked at me with a hint of concern, her brow furrowing slightly. "What's wrong?" I could see the panic building in her eyes, and I knew this was it. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling slightly as I pulled up the pictures of her with Eric. "I saw you last night," I said slowly, holding the phone in front of her, "with him." Her face fell, and I watched as her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For a moment there was silence, an almost deafening quiet as the realization washed over her. "What? You're just being paranoid," she stammered, trying to regain her composure. "It was just a work thing, you know how it is." I cut her off, my voice steady but laced with anger. "No, Sarah, this isn't just some work outing. I have pictures of you laughing with him, looking happy. This is more than friendship, and you know it." She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. I needed her to understand the gravity of what she had done. "You've been lying to me for months. I've seen the texts and I know about your affair. Just admit it." Her face twisted in a mix of anger and guilt, and for a brief moment I thought she might actually confess. But instead, she quickly shifted tactics, her tone defensive. "You're overreacting. It's not what you think. I was just lonely and you've been so distant. I thought we were just going through a rough patch." The audacity of her words hit me like a slap in the face. How could she turn this around on me? "You think I don't notice how you've changed, how you've been pulling away. And now you're trying to blame me for your infidelity." My voice rose, filled with disbelief and frustration. "Mark, please listen," she pleaded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. You have to understand, it's been so hard for me. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, Sarah. You hurt me deeply." I felt a wave of emotions crashing over me: anger, betrayal, sorrow. "I loved you and you threw it away. You chose to be with someone else. I can't believe you'd even try to justify this." With that, her facade began to crumble. The tears flowed freely down her cheeks, and for a moment I saw raw vulnerability in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mark. I don't know what I was thinking. I was foolish, and I never wanted to hurt you. I love you." Her confession hit me harder than I expected. Love. It was a word that felt so heavy in the air between us. The truth was, I felt a pang of sorrow for the woman I had married, the woman I still loved. But how could I reconcile that love with what she had done? I had to remind myself that this wasn't about forgiveness right now. This was about truth. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Sarah. You've broken that trust, and I can't just sweep this under the rug," I told her, my voice steady but filled with pain. "I want you to be honest with me. How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, looking down at her lap, and I felt the tension in the room tighten. "A few months," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It started after the promotion. I felt so neglected, and he was there, showing interest in me. I thought I could handle it, but then it spiraled." That admission crushed me. A few months, I could already feel the walls crumbling around us, the foundation of our marriage cracking under the weight of her betrayal. "So this wasn't just a one-time mistake. You let it happen, knowing it would hurt me." Her silence spoke volumes, and the tears continued to fall. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I had all the evidence I needed, and now I had a choice to make. Would I allow her to manipulate me further, to offer empty promises of change, or would I take control? I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the next step. "I need time to think, Sarah. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I can't continue like this. You've shattered my trust, and we can't just pretend this didn't happen." The room felt heavy with unspoken words, and I stood up, ready to leave the conversation behind, but knowing that the emotional fallout was just beginning. I needed space to process everything, to figure out what I truly wanted. I was shattered but resolute. My next move would not just be about revenge. It would be about reclaiming my life and taking back my power. I was done being the victim in this narrative. It was time to write my own story. The following days were a chaotic whirlwind of emotions and decisions. I felt like I was navigating through a fog of betrayal, anger, and grief. I moved through the house like a ghost, retreating into my own thoughts as Sarah tried to reach out to me, attempting to salvage what was left of our relationship. She would text me, trying to spark conversations about our past, or send me loving messages that felt hollow against the backdrop of her betrayal. I didn't respond much, choosing instead to reflect on everything that had happened. I spent hours on the couch, staring at the walls, replaying our conversations in my mind. I felt angry and heartbroken all at once. I had seen the worst part of Sarah, the part that had lied to me and sought comfort in another man. The trust we had built over the years was shattered, and I felt like I was standing on the precipice of a decision that could change the course of my life. One night, after another awkward dinner where we barely spoke, I decided to talk to Jason. I needed to get out of the house, to gather my thoughts with someone who understood what I was going through. We met at our favorite bar, a local spot that felt too familiar in the midst of my storm. As we sat across from each other in a dimly lit booth, I poured out my heart. I just don't know what to do, man. Part of me wants to scream at her, to make her feel the pain she put me through. But another part of me remembers the good times we had, the love we shared. It's all so confusing. Jason nodded, his eyes filled with empathy. You have every right to be angry, Mark. What she did was unforgivable, but you also have to think about what you want moving forward. If you stay, can you genuinely forgive her? Or will this always be a shadow over your relationship? His words struck a chord, and I realized that I hadn't even considered the implications of forgiveness. Could I really rebuild our marriage after this? Would I forever be haunted by images of her with Eric? It felt impossible. I was still on the fence about whether to confront her again, to lay all my feelings bare, or to take the plunge and end things once and for all. You need to take back control, man, Jason continued. You've been playing defense this whole time. Maybe it's time to put the ball in your court. Show her that you're not going to be the victim. It doesn't mean you have to be cruel, but you need to stand your ground. His words resonated with me. I had been so focused on her emotions and her guilt that I had forgotten about my own power. I needed to channel my anger into something constructive, something that would give me clarity. The next day, I decided to take action. I reached out to an attorney for a consultation. I didn't want to jump into divorce just yet, but I felt like knowing my options would empower me. As I sat in the attorney's office, discussing the logistics of separation, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was taking charge of my life for the first time since discovering Sarah's betrayal. I learned about the divorce process, how assets would be divided, and what to expect if I chose to move forward. The attorney was professional and kind, and I left the meeting with a clearer understanding of what lay ahead. That night, I returned home with a newfound sense of purpose. Sarah was sitting on the couch, her eyes filled with hope as she looked up at me. "Mark, can we talk?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the conversation that loomed ahead. "Sure," I replied, trying to keep my tone even, "but you need to understand that things are different now." Her eyes widened, and I could see the worry etching deeper lines on her face. We sat down on opposite ends of the couch, and I felt the tension in the air. "I've been thinking a lot about us," I began, choosing my words carefully. "And I don't want to keep going in circles. I know what you did, and while I appreciate your attempts to reach out, I need you to understand that trust is gone. It's not something that can just be rebuilt overnight." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know I messed up. I'm so sorry, Mark. I've been doing a lot of thinking too. I want to fix this. I don't want to lose you." I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but I knew better than to let that cloud my judgment. "I appreciate that you want to fix things, but it's going to take more than just words. I don't know if I can fully trust you again. Please, just give me a chance to prove I can change," she begged, her voice trembling. "I love you, I'll do whatever it takes." Her desperation stirred something within me, sadness, anger, but also a flicker of hope. But would I be able to forgive her? Would I be able to live with this pain? I couldn't answer those questions yet. I needed time to think. "I'm not ready to make any decisions right now," I said finally, feeling the weight of my words settle between us. "I want to take things slow. I'm not saying it's over, but I need space to figure out what I want." Her expression fell, disappointment evident in her eyes, but she nodded, understanding the gravity of my words. "Okay, I'll give you space. Just know that I'm here whenever you're ready to talk." As I walked away from that conversation, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. I had taken control, but the path ahead was still unclear. I was no longer just a victim in this situation. I was drawing boundaries and standing my ground. It was a small victory, but it felt empowering. The next day, I decided to take another step toward reclaiming my life. I started focusing on myself, hitting the gym, spending time with friends, and even diving back into hobbies I had neglected. I realized that I needed to rediscover who I was outside of being Sarah's husband. I knew the journey ahead would be tough, but I was determined to find my way back to myself, whether that meant working through the pain with Sarah or moving on entirely. Either way, I was ready to fight for my happiness, and that was the most powerful realization of all. As the weeks passed, I focused on my own well-being, determined to reclaim my sense of self. I committed to my gym routine, pushing my limits and using the physical exertion as a means to channel my anger and frustration. I began to feel stronger, not just physically but emotionally as well. I was becoming more aware of my own needs and desires, rather than being consumed by the betrayal that had rocked my world. During this time, Sarah continued to reach out, trying to initiate conversations and express her remorse. I would engage with her but kept my distance, maintaining my boundaries. It was clear she was putting in effort, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down. Trust was still a fragile thing, and I didn't want to jump into any decisions while I was still processing everything. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I received a text from Jason. "Hey man, let's go grab a drink. I think we need to talk." I agreed, knowing that he could provide the perspective I was craving. We met at a local bar, and as we settled into a booth, I shared how I'd been feeling. "I'm trying to focus on myself, but part of me still feels tethered to Sarah. It's like this constant pull, you know? I want to move on, but I'm afraid of letting go." Jason nodded thoughtfully. "It's completely normal to feel that way. You've invested a lot into your relationship, and it's not easy to just cut ties. But you have to remember that your happiness matters too. You have to do what's best for you." His words resonated with me. I realized I had been so fixated on Sarah's feelings, on what she wanted, that I had neglected to prioritize my own needs. "I just don't want to make any rash decisions," I admitted, "but I also don't want to get stuck in limbo. Maybe it's time to lay everything out on the table," Jason suggested. "Have a heart-to-heart with her. You need to be clear about what you want and where you stand. It's the only way you'll be able to move forward, whether that's together or apart." That night, I returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. I resolved to have an honest conversation with Sarah. It was time to confront the reality of our relationship head-on, to discuss what the future might hold for both of us. When I approached her that evening, I could see the apprehension in her eyes. "Mark, is everything okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "We need to talk, Sarah, about us." We sat down in the living room, and I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on us. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what happened, and I need to be honest with you. I'm still hurt, and I don't know if I can forgive you right now." She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. "I know I messed up. I'm sorry for everything, truly. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right." I held up my hand, stopping her. "I appreciate that, but it's not just about apologies anymore. I need to know if you truly understand the gravity of what you did. This isn't just about us. It's about respect and trust. How can I trust you again if you haven't taken the steps to prove that you've changed?" She nodded, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. "I understand, and I'm willing to show you. I've been going to therapy to work on myself, to understand why I made those choices. I want to be a better person, not just for you but for me. I've realized how much I've taken you for granted." Hearing her speak about therapy made me realize that she was taking steps to address her issues. It was a positive sign, but it didn't erase the pain she caused. "That's a start, but it's going to take more than just words. I need time to figure out if I can rebuild this trust." "Take all the time you need," she replied, her voice trembling. "I want you to be happy, even if that means we have to go our separate ways. But I'm hoping we can find a way back to each other. I love you, Mark." The statement hung in the air, heavy with sentiment. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but as much as I wanted to believe her, I was still far from convinced. I love you too, but love isn't enough right now. I need to prioritize my happiness. As we talked more, I began to articulate my feelings about what had happened and how it had affected me. I voiced my concerns about the future, about the possibility of being with someone who had the potential to hurt me again. We went in circles, discussing the same points, but I felt a small sense of clarity in those moments. I was setting boundaries, taking control of my narrative. After our conversation, I didn't feel immediate relief. Instead, I felt the weight of uncertainty still looming. But I had taken a crucial step forward. I had laid my feelings on the table, and I had made it clear that I wasn't going to allow myself to be manipulated or hurt again. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to focus on myself while remaining open to the idea of what could be, if anything, between Sarah and me. I was gradually coming to terms with the reality of our situation. I was still unsure about what the future held, but I was learning to embrace the idea of self-love and self-empowerment, regardless of what happened with Sarah. It was a journey of healing, and I was finally ready to take the reins of my life. Whether that meant working through the pain of our past, starting anew, or moving on entirely, I was determined to find my path. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As time moved forward, I found myself in a strange place, one of healing and self-discovery. I was gradually learning to separate my identity from the turmoil of my relationship with Sarah. The weight of betrayal hadn't vanished entirely, but it began to lessen as I invested more into my own interests and friendships. Jason was a steadfast ally during this time, offering support and encouragement whenever I needed it. I continued to see a therapist, which helped me process my emotions and gain perspective. It was a safe space where I could express my feelings without judgment, and my therapist guided me through the complex aftermath of Sarah's betrayal. I was learning to articulate my feelings and recognize that it was okay to prioritize my own well-being. Meanwhile, Sarah kept her promise to work on herself. She attended therapy regularly and reached out to me occasionally with updates. I could see glimpses of the person I had fallen in love with, glimpses of the warmth and care that had initially drawn me to her. But I remained cautious, aware that rebuilding trust would take significant time and effort from both of us. One chilly evening, we met for coffee at a small cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without the weight of home looming over us. I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation as I approached the cafe. As I stepped inside, I saw her sitting at a table, her fingers wrapped around a steaming cup. "Hey," she greeted, her smile tentative but sincere. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," I replied, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. We exchanged small talk about our lives, and I could feel a tentative connection forming again, like a fragile thread weaving us back together. After a while, the conversation turned serious. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching," Sarah began, her voice steady. "I know I hurt you, and I'll never be able to take that back, but I want to prove to you that I can be better. I'm committed to making changes in my life, not just to win you back, but for my own growth." I appreciated her honesty, but I still felt a lingering uncertainty. "I'm glad to hear that, Sarah, I really am, but I need you to understand that trust isn't something that can be restored overnight. I'm still processing everything, and I don't want to rush back into anything." She nodded, her expression shifting to one of understanding. "I get that. I'm not expecting everything to go back to normal right away. I just want you to know that I'm here, willing to work on this if you are." As we talked, I began to see the potential for healing. I was still hesitant, but I realized that perhaps there was a path forward, one that involved both of us taking responsibility for our actions. We discussed boundaries and what it would take for us to consider rebuilding our relationship. In the weeks that followed, we slowly began to navigate the possibility of a fresh start. We took things day by day, focusing on communication and slowly rekindling the emotional intimacy that had been lost. It was challenging, and there were moments when the shadows of doubt crept back in, but I was learning to voice my feelings without fear of judgment. As spring approached, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I had spent months healing and rediscovering my identity, and now I was open to the possibility of love again, whether it was with Sarah or eventually moving on entirely. I found solace in the idea that I was no longer defined by her betrayal, but rather by my resilience and capacity to grow. One evening, we went for a walk in a nearby park, the sun setting on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I turned to Sarah, who was walking beside me, and said, "I can't promise I won't have doubts or fears, but I'm willing to explore where this can go if you are." Her smile was bright and genuine, and for the first time in a long time I felt a flicker of excitement. "I'm here for it, Mark. I'll take things one step at a time with you." As we continued our walk, I felt a sense of freedom. Whatever the future held, I was ready to embrace it, this journey of healing, of love, and of self-discovery. I had learned the importance of standing my ground, of prioritizing my happiness, and of recognizing my worth. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was a survivor, and I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, whatever that may look like. In that moment, I knew that regardless of the outcome, I had gained something invaluable through this experience. The strength to confront my pain, the courage to choose my path, and the understanding that love, in all its complexities, is worth exploring on my terms.